everybody, welcome back to my studio. And I'm going to talk about the weather because the weather's been bizarre. We've had snow and sunshine all in one day some days. It's epically cold out there, and just because I'm trying to grow my seedlings, that's typical spring weather here in the UK. Anyway, it's gloriously bright and sunny, and that's very cheering. And I'm back on with my daffodils this week, which really are a little blast of sunshine themselves. I can tell it's spring. I was just going to say, I've got eggs today from my chickens. They are laying beautifully now. They're really getting into their stride. So I brought those in because I pick them up and then I'm on my way back up to the house. I'll remember to take them. That's the idea anyway. And so what am I going to talk about today? Well, first of all, yes, thank you very much to everybody who came to my Zoom talk, if you came, which was on how I do my YouTube channel. I hope that if you came that was of use and interest to you. I really enjoyed doing it. It was really good fun. I sat in my kitchen, which I think is hilarious, talking to the world. And that was really great. I got some nice feedback and that was great to do. And as I say, I hope that inspires you to get on with maybe what you'd like to do. Because I've found filming to be a really creative thing to do, a creative process. And it's fed my making, if you like, the fact that I'm showing you these things. So, and thank you to you all for being here. Thank you for subscribing. It's just really lovely. I am just heartwarmed by the comments and the questions that you ask, and connecting with people around the world is just such a joy. So today I'm going to keep this, oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'll have to cut this bit out. I've suddenly got a cough. Just a minute, I'll get a drink. Just a minute, I'll get a drink. Hang on, I've got a little bit of water left in here. Yes, so this is my Follow My Dreams mug. Follow your dreams, which is very much what I'm doing at the moment. Somebody asked me if I had a plan the other day, and I thought, no, not really. I just do what comes to me to do. Right, so I've got some boxes of fabric. I've got some lovely, lovely threads that I've been playing with. And I have to tell you that although I was going to show you really nice samples, I thought I was going to have a finished piece for you, sorry, which I kind of got. If I just show you this briefly, if I just show you this briefly, this is kind of where I'd got to last week. I've got the edges all done, and so that's the background ready. But I got a bit sidetracked because I started playing with painting some pages in my sketchbook, which I'll show you a bit closer up in a moment. This is just a general workbook that I use, and so I've kind of gone off in a slightly different direction, which is fine, and that's the whole thing. This is a process, and I'm not showing you this, that this is not like a workshop where you do what I say and you go off and make these things. My intention with this channel is that this is just like me showing you what I do, and maybe that will inspire you to go and do something of your own that's, you know, prompted by what I do, and maybe you'll go and explore something and try something different as a result of me showing you things. So this is just going to be continuing the process of me making something daffodil-y, and so I will get on with that now and I will show you the sample that I've been creating. Okay, so what I've got here is my basket of little scraps of fabric, little cut off bits, and from those little scraps I have cut myself sort of daffodil petal-y shapes. They're very rough. They're almost like torpedoes, I think. They're sort of, I don't know what shape they are. They're sort of like a double-ended petal, I suppose. I kind of just wanted to keep it very loose. I didn't want it to be too structured as a daffodil head. So I'm going to put these under a piece of net, which I've got here. I don't know if you can see that. It's a bit of white net, and if I put that over the top of that and find myself a few of these little pin things. I do like a nice pin. Very helpful things, pins. And what I don't want is for these petals to sort of move and shake about while they are being embellished, but at the same time I don't want to put too many pins in because they just get in the way when you're embellishing, and you have to be a bit careful. But I think that should hold it more or less. I might pop another one in just there. There we go. That'll kind of hold it close enough down. Pop this under my embellisher and then we'll see how that turns out. So, embellisher all set up. These are the, if you haven't seen one before, 12 sharp needles in here. Different machines have different numbers of needles. This one's got 12. and they will punch the fabrics through for me and make it into one fabric, if you like. Gives it a nice surface. So I'm going to make a horrible noise now. Hopefully, if I switch it on, that is. There we go. Switch it on and off we go. It makes a bit more of a noise because I've got the net on top. Plus, I've actually got quite a few fabrics on here, and I've actually used a bit thicker kind of wadding today. I've got some new curtain interlining, and it's a little bit thicker than my usual stuff. So do is just get these held in place. Held in place roughly, and then I'll take this net off and oops, just bring the needles up. Same as on a sewing machine, you need to bring your needles up and you have to put your presser foot down when you start. So I tend to keep mine down, to be honest, because I know I can move the fabric in and out. Now see, they've all moved around a bit, and it might be that I want to add some more on top, but I'm just going to embellish these roughly down. As I say, it's very much an experiment, this. Okay, so it's made it pretty rough and ready. And I'm going to take it back over and have a really good look at it, and I'm going to play around with some centres and see if I want to keep it like this or whether I want to add some different petals on top, maybe some lace. I'll go back to the drawing board and have another little look. So looking at that, I feel as though there's a bit of a gap here. It looks like the daffodils have all been squashed, so I'm going to add a couple of little petals, a couple more petals onto there, into the mix. Let's just pop that on there. Pop that on there, and I think once we've embellished those in place, and if I take these little centre bits which I've made and we'll pop those on, I think it'll start to look quite good. So I'll just embellish those on. Right, so I'm happy now with how those all look. I've got a nice, I feel as though it's got a feeling of movement to it. I didn't want it to look too static. I wanted it just, the embellisher, to do its magic. It's quite rough looking, and I obviously haven't done any stitching onto that yet, but I will do, and then I'll put the centres on. And as I say, these little centres that I've made are just little circles. I've got 2 layers of fabric. I've got a very, this is what my mum calls the slimy fabric. This is the blouse fabric that I had. It's kind of organza-y. It's very soft and flexible. So what I've done is, to make this, I've done a little circle of that, a little circle of some of the lace, and then into the middle of that, what I've got here, sorry, I've got bits everywhere, what I've got here is some really nice, I think it's crochet yarn that I bought from a friend. My lovely friend Lynn had a lovely yarn shop online, and this was some that I bought from her. So all I've done there is I've wrapped it around my fingers. This is completely made up by me, guys. This is my funny little technique that I've just invented to make these little centres, okay? So it's a bit big. I mean, you could make big versions, but what I'm doing with this is I'm twisting it round, and I will pin that in the middle of there. But what I'll do first of all is I'm going to gather this up with a few stitches, and then I'm going to pin that in the middle of there, and I'll sew that on, and that will make me these little centres here, and I will play with those. But I'm going to do the stitching onto these petals first, because I feel as though they do need a bit of oh, what's the word, a bit of defining. Is that the word, defining? So I'm going to make the centres, and I'm going to stitch those on a bit, and then we'll have another look and see if we like it. This is just a sample before I work on my bigger piece, and I think it's going okay so far, but we will see. Okay, so I've got my 3 little centres here. I've got that one ready. I'm going to put a little bit of, oops, wrap this around my little fingers again, tuck the ends in. It's a bit of a fiddle, but you know, I never mind a bit of a fiddle. It's a nice thing to be doing. So we'll pin that on there. So underneath these little yellow centres, I've got some stitch and tear, which if you've watched my videos for a while, you'll know it's one of my favourite stabilisers. So it's kind of, I'll just show you a bit of it here. It's called stitch and tear. I'm sure there's other kinds, but this is what I use. It's quite papery, but the nice thing is you can tear it, so I can stitch these onto here, and then I can just tear off the back once I've got them stitched in place. If you've got something else to use, you know, you could use a bit of net on the back, you could use a bit of, I don't know, violin sort of stabilizer, whatever you've got in to do this, just so that when you stitch around these centres, which is what I'm going to do next, you've got something that stops it being eaten by your sewing machine, because really you don't want to be feeding your sewing machine, it'll just get fat. So I'm going to stitch these centres on and then we'll place them on and see if we like it. So this is very dinky and a little bit of a fiddle to sew, but with a little bit of quick free machine embroidery, I will get these on in no time at all. I'm just going to leave the pin in because that helps keep it in place just for now until I get a little bit of quick stitching, and then I'll pull it out. A little bit fiddly to do these, but you know what, bit of fun. Bit of fun. I don't want it completely stitched, I want it to be fairly sort of free. And let's just see, do the same again with this one. Get that pin out again. I'm sure there's lots of other ways that you can make little centres for your daffodils, but this was what I came up with and it seemed to work reasonably. Take that out. Take that out. There we go. What you want to make sure is that it's not going to sort of unravel. So I think that's okay. So there we go, three little pigs all in a row, and I'm just going to snip off my little ends. And as I say, this is the beauty of stitch and tear, is I can just tear that off as close in as I want to the stitching. I mean, obviously if you have a non-papery stabilizer, you can just cut round that bit, so you should end up with a little circle like this. And I think that's a little bit big for what I want compared to, that's the original size. So I'm going to cut around it, you see. I made it bigger because it was much easier to handle. If I try and sew something like that, I think that's just going to be such a fiddle. So I made it slightly bigger, so I will trim around that with my big snippy scissors. And just move that out of the way. And we'll just cut around there. I mean, obviously you could make a little pattern. I tend to do things by eye. I've got quite a good eye these days. Well, I've been cutting circles out for a long time now, and I don't mind if it's a bit wonky, as I always say, let's celebrate the wonk. So that's not too bad. And the thing is, it's all about the sort of the effect you get when you get these things en masse. So if I've got a whole, you know, you could fill a whole piece of fabric with these, and I think they'd look really lovely. Oh, actually I've made 3 and I don't need 3, but never mind. That one will come in for something else. So we'll just tear these off. This is a very nice thing to do, just fiddling about with bits of fabric. You know, what else would you want to be doing? It's pretty cold outside today, although it's been lovely, sunny, bright spring weather. We did actually have hail yesterday morning. Woke up and the place was looking like it was frosty, but when we went outside it was actually hail, great lumps of it. So April, yes, but I'm not taking my vest off just yet. And the little seedlings that I'm planting at the moment are they're going to be in and out for quite a while to come, because it's too cold for them to be outside completely. I put them out during the day, and then they're in like a cold frame thing, and then I bring them in at night. So there we go. And I do think that daffodils, maybe it's just that they bring sunshine to our lives at a time after the sort of winter when we've had a lot of grey days. Really, the daffodils are just like a blast of sunshine, aren't they? So that's a spare one. Or maybe actually I'll take these 3. I'm going to use these 3 because they're all from the same batch. And I think, let's just move all the bits out of the way. I think that looks really quite sweet. I really quite like that. I mean, I could just stitch those on and leave it completely but I think I'm going to try, what I might do is stitch into one of them and see if I like it. This is the whole joy of doing a sample. Until I get onto my big piece, I'll have worked out roughly how I want it to look, because I don't know about you, but I could plan this and think, oh yes, that's how I'm going to do it, but then it doesn't always turn out how you think it's going to turn out, and it doesn't always look how you think it's going to look. And I think it's much better to be flexible, and that's what I love about. I think I love this little sample actually. I did show you, I think I showed you this briefly, didn't I? They could be, you know, bright orange. They could be really bright orange nasturtium-y looking things, but actually I think I like them like that. A bit of subtlety, and then the texture is what we're appreciating. So I'm going to do some background stitching on one of these, see if I like it. You see, I could make another sample and just try. You could go mad, you could go completely mad with this, but at some point you have to make a commitment, and you have to say, no, this is how I'm going to do it. Yeah, so I might do a bit of stitching. I can't quite make my mind up, and then those will get stitched on and held in place, and then I'm going to see if that's how I'm going to do my big piece. Okay, so I'm set up for free machine embroidery. If you're not used to doing that, I've got an embroidery foot or a darning foot on here, which goes up and down and means that the fabric can move around underneath while it stitches. I have lowered the feed dog teeth, and I actually reduced my top tension, but that's just personal to my machine. And I put the stitch length onto 0 because I control the stitch length. So sorry, apologies to those who know how to do this. That's just for anybody who's just a newbie. And what I'm going to do is just do some free machine embroidery. So the beautiful thing about that is you can go in any direction you choose. So I don't have to worry about it too much. I kind of want to just feel like these are just going to get a bit of stitching on them. I'm not particularly making it like one daffodil shape. And I'm going to put a little bit of this colour on. This is quite a dark yellow. And then I think I'll put a bit of lighter yellow on as well. Okay, so I think we'll change colour thread, and I will finish this off, and then I'll sew the centre bit in. So that's the left hand one stitched. The petals are all stitched down, and the centre is stitched in place, and I think on the whole I like that. So I'm going to do a bit more sort of stitching onto these bits before I put the middles on, because I think that it just gives it a little hint of definition. You can still keep it looking like there's lots of different daffodils on here, sort of behind each other, but I think it's quite nice with a little bit of stitching on. It makes me happy anyway to do some stitching. That's always my favourite bit. So I'll finish this off, and we'll have a final look at it. Oh, well, you know what? I am really quite happy with this. I'm chuffed with how it's turned out. I've got some little threads to trim off here. One or two of these need a bit of trimming, but I think for a little fun sample, I'm really pleased with how that's gone, how it's turned out. I don't care if they're not like completely anatomically correct daffodils. That doesn't bother me. The important thing is that I've created something that feels like daffodils, and that makes me very happy. So I think the next thing is I'll get my big piece out, which is here, ready. And in fact, what you can do, you see, you can pop your sample. Let me just see if I can move you back a bit, guys. Let's just fiddle about with this camera a moment. Let's just see if I can pull you back a little bit so you can see a bit more. How's that? That's a little bit better. So you can see, if you take your little sample and you pop it onto your bigger piece, you can get a feeling of how that's going to work going across, and how, whether you want to put them in a line going across, which I think I do for this one. Because it's just this mass of daffodils, I think we're just going to keep it as a fairly simple sort of line, and it'll go up and down a little bit. You know, these petals aren't all in a straight line. So I'm really happy with that. I'm very pleased. And what I might do for next week is do a bit of work on the other things, the other ways of doing it, and I will show you that as well. But in the meanwhile, I'm just going to go for lunch. I think it's lunchtime. I'm quite hungry now, and I will see you here back in my studio next week. I hope you have a lovely, relaxing and creative week, And if you can get outside into some lovely weather, so much the better. And maybe you're doing your gardening too. It's been great having you here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.